Imagine a promise made decades ago, a bedrock of financial security for millions of Americans in their golden years. That promise is Social Security. But what if that bedrock is cracking? What if the safety net you've paid into your entire working life is facing an unprecedented crisis, closer than many realize? The latest warnings are stark. Social Security is running out of time, and the insolvency date is speeding towards us. This isn't just a political debate, it's a looming financial reality that could impact you, your parents, or your future. The countdown begins. A sooner than expected deadline. For years, we've heard whispers about Social Security's long-term challenges. But the recent report from the program's own trustees delivered a bombshell. The Social Security Trust Fund is now projected to be exhausted in the first quarter of 2033. That's 9 months sooner than they predicted just a year ago. What exactly does exhausted mean for you? It means that if no legislative action is taken to shore up the system, Social Security will only be able to pay out approximately 74% of promised benefits. Imagine relying on that income for your retirement, only to have a quarter of it vanish overnight. This isn't a theoretical cut. It's a terrifying prospect for millions of current retirees and those fast approaching their golden years. For younger generations, it raises profound questions about whether the system will even exist in a recognizable form when it's their turn to collect. The perfect storm. Why the coffers are draining. How did we get to this precipice? It's not a single factor, but rather a confluence of powerful, long-term demographic and economic shifts that have been brewing for decades, largely unaddressed by consistent policy action. Firstly, the over 65 population has nearly doubled since the year 2000. Advances in medicine and lifestyle have allowed people to live longer, healthier lives. While this is a monumental human achievement, it means beneficiaries are collecting payments for extended periods, putting a greater strain on the system. Secondly, and critically, declining fertility rates mean fewer babies are being born. This directly translates to a shrinking pool of young workers entering the workforce to support the growing number of retirees. The classic Social Security model relies on a robust pay-as-you-go system, where current workers' contributions largely fund current retirees' benefits. Decades ago, the worker-to-beneficiary ratio was much higher. For example, in 1950, there were 16.5 workers for every Social Security beneficiary. Today, that number has plummeted to approximately 2.8 workers per beneficiary, and it's projected to fall even further. This demographic imbalance is the primary driver of the impending shortfall. Thirdly, while often debated, slower legal immigration rates can also play a role. Immigrants, particularly younger ones, contribute to the tax base and help replenish the working population. Policies that restrict immigration can inadvertently exacerbate the worker-to-beneficiary imbalance. For decades, experts warned about these looming trends, suggesting that gradual adjustments to taxes, benefits, or the retirement age could have painlessly averted the current crisis. But, as we stand now, the window for easy fixes has slammed shut, leaving us facing more drastic and politically unpopular choices. The political gridlock, unpopular truths, and deferred decisions. So, if the problem is clear, why isn't it fixed? The answer, unfortunately, lies deeply entrenched in the harsh realities of American politics and the immense difficulty of delivering unpopular truths to the electorate. Restoring Social Security's long-term solvency today would require incredibly difficult, politically hazardous choices that no major politician seems willing to embrace wholeheartedly. We're talking about either a substantial benefit cut for current and future beneficiaries, a proposal that could provoke immense outrage from seniors and their families, potentially ending political careers. Analysts estimate that an immediate and permanent 22% benefit cut would be needed to close the gap. Alternatively, an immediate and permanent increase in the payroll tax to around 16% from the current 12.4% would be necessary. This would mean less money in every worker's paycheck, a direct hit to the middle class, and an equally unpalatable option for politicians. We've seen this pattern repeatedly. During his presidency, Donald Trump publicly and repeatedly ruled out any cuts to Social Security, a stance widely echoed by many Republicans who fear alienating their base. Similarly, when Democrats held power in Congress and the White House, they often avoided making these tough decisions, perhaps fearing public backlash or a perceived betrayal of their own supporters who rely heavily on these benefits. The bipartisan agreement needed for such monumental changes simply hasn't materialized. It seems no one wants to be the messenger of bad news, or the one to propose a solution that inevitably causes some pain. But, as William A. Galston, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, put it, at some point, politicians will have to level with the American people about the hard choices that lie ahead. The longer they wait, the more drastic and painful the solutions become for everyone involved. This political paralysis is a core part of the crisis itself. Beyond borrowing, the $36 trillion elephant in the room, some might naturally ask, if the fund is running short, why not just let Social Security borrow more money? On the surface, the fix would seem easy if endless borrowing wasn't a cause for concern. Congress could simply amend the existing rules that currently prevent the program from borrowing money to cover benefit payouts. However, the reality is far more complex. As noted by Bloomberg, we're not operating in a vacuum. The national debt is currently sitting at a staggering $36.66 trillion and rising fast. Adding Social Security's substantial and growing shortfall to that monumental existing debt is simply not a fiscally responsible or sustainable option for the country. It would place an unbearable burden on future generations and could trigger broader economic instability. So, given the constraints of the national debt, what are the other practical ideas on the table to ensure solvency? David von Druhel in the Washington Post outlined a few key proposals. Raise more revenue. This is often the favored approach on the left. It could involve increasing the Social Security payroll tax rate itself, as mentioned earlier. Another significant proposal is to lift the cap on taxable income. Further raise the eligibility age. This is often a consideration on the right. The full retirement age has already been gradually increased from 65 to nearly 67 for those born in 1960 or later, reflecting increased life expectancies. Proponents argue that, with people living longer and generally being healthier later in life, a further increase to, say, 68 or even 69, for future generations, would align the system with modern demographics. However, this disproportionately impacts those in physically demanding jobs. Increase the number of workers paying into the system. This could imply policies that encourage a higher birth rate, a very long-term and difficult solution, or, more immediately, policies that increase the working age population through increased legal immigration. More immigrants mean more tax contributors, which could help replenish the worker-to-beneficiary ratio. However, recent political rhetoric and actions, such as President Donald Trump's immigration crackdowns, have often pushed in the opposite direction, potentially exacerbating the problem rather than alleviating it. The investment gamble, a risky fix with no free lunch. Beyond these direct adjustments to taxes and benefits, there's one more intriguing and potentially transformative idea that has gained bipartisan traction: the investment approach. Proposed by Senators Bill Cassidy and Tim Kaine Devia, this concept suggests creating a separate fund for Social Security that could invest a portion of its assets in stocks and other investments, moving beyond the current, more conservative requirement to only invest in low-yield Treasury bonds. Their logic is compelling on the surface. The stock market has historically provided much higher returns than government bonds over the long term. The senators estimate that savvy investing could generate enough returns to significantly shore up the fund's coffers, potentially even making it fully solvent. And it's tempting to think they might be right. As Allison Schrager of Bloomberg points out, in hindsight, The program would not be facing a shortfall if it had invested in the booming stock market decades ago. However, Schrager quickly adds a critical caveat. But investing is always easy in hindsight. The stock market, while offering higher potential returns, also comes with inherent volatility and risks. There's no guarantee that the market will replicate the outsized returns of the past 20 years. A significant market downturn at a crucial time could exacerbate, not solve, Social Security's financial woes, potentially leading to even larger shortfalls. Critics also argue that shifting Social Security funds into the stock market could expose retirees' benefits to market fluctuations, which might be too risky for a program designed to provide out security. Moreover, given Social Security's proximity to insolvency in 2033, many experts believe that even with a shift to stock investments, some combination of tax hikes and benefit cuts are likely inevitable in the short to medium term. The returns from stock investments typically accrue over many years, perhaps too slowly to address the immediate cash flow problem. The harsh reality, as Schrager concludes, is that the first rule of investing, after all, is that there is no such thing as a free lunch. Every solution comes with trade-offs, risks, or costs that must be carefully weighed. Your future, their choices, what happens next. So, what does this impending crisis mean for you? Personally, if you're currently receiving benefits, there's a very real concern about future cuts to your monthly income. If you're nearing retirement, your carefully laid financial plans could be drastically altered, forcing you to work longer or reevaluate your standard of living. And if you're younger, perhaps still decades away from retirement, you might wonder with increasing anxiety if Social Security will even exist in its current form, or if it will be a viable safety net when it's your turn to collect. The insolvency date keeps getting closer, the demographic shifts are undeniable, and the political will to enact painful but necessary reforms remains frustratingly elusive. The debate is complex, often filled with partisan accusations, misinformation, and strong emotional opinions, but the underlying actuarial math is unforgiving. Understanding these challenges, the various proposed solutions, and their potential impacts is no longer just an academic exercise. It's a vital step towards protecting your own financial future. Staying informed and demanding accountability from your elected officials will be essential as lawmakers eventually face the unavoidable pressure to address Social Security's future head-on. Your retirement security, and that of generations to come, truly depends on it. What do you believe is the most equitable and effective solution for Social Security's future? Share your thoughts and concerns in the comments below.